Old Hollywood, where the bright lights hide countless untold stories. The glamorous world of cinema created immortal legends, but behind the fame and red carpets were things that the press of the time didn't even dare to touch. During the Golden Age, many famous stars had to make great sacrifices to survive and maintain their positions in this harsh industry. Think you know all the secrets of classic Hollywood? Get ready to see things from a completely different perspective. The truth is often not what we imagine. And revealing number 4 on this list may change the way you look at the icons you once admired forever. Scotty Bowers. A name rarely mentioned publicly, but a powerful influence behind the scenes of old Hollywood. More than just a handyman, Scotty built a career on secrets that the entertainment industry would rather keep hidden. Starting out as a gas station attendant on Hollywood Boulevard in the late 1940s, he quickly became the go-to guy for big names who needed to take care of their private needs in a discreet and secure manner. In his memoir, Full Service, Scotty reveals a series of stories that were once buried in the dark. Not just actors, but directors, producers, and box office moguls all sought him out. Not to discuss movies, but to connect with people who could help them unwind or find something beyond the spotlight. Scotty didn't just serve the elite, he was part of it. Many young men with dreams of becoming actors came to his underground empire, hoping that a night's work would pay the rent or a chance at a better life. His names ranged from A-list movie stars to bit players who appeared at fancy parties by day, but quietly made their living at night. And if you think these are just fabrications, know that serious memoirs and biographies, even those that shy away from scandal, have confirmed his story. Scotty didn't just live in that underground world. He helped expose it. In a Hollywood of glitter and fantasy, he reminded us that every dream has a price, and behind every famous smile lies a story few know. Ramon Novarro, one of the most silent and heartbreaking tragedies of classic Hollywood. Born José Ramón Gil Samaniego, he was a silent-era glamour icon, known for his charismatic and enigmatic Latin lover. But before he donned the velvet tuxedos, Novarro's early years in Hollywood were a struggle to survive. Young, handsome, and impoverished in a tough city, he struggled to make ends meet. According to reliable sources and insiders, Novarro, like many young men at the time, took on private, discreet jobs outside the spotlight. The world he entered was one of backroom dealings, late-night phone calls, and shady relationships with people who could make or break careers with a nod. It wasn't the kind of role you'd put on your resume, but at the time, it was the kind of role that could feed a person. In later life, Ramon Novarro became a grim warning sign. His tragic death at the hands of 2 young men he met in an unlikely setting exposed the dark side and the dangers of the double life many led. His story teaches a familiar but still valuable lesson. Glamour comes at a price, and sometimes the people who shine the brightest are the ones who pay the highest price to be seen. In those moments, the silver screen can seem colder than ever. Rock Hudson starts the list with a surprising name. He was once an icon of American masculinity with a handsome face and a perfect square jaw that captivated audiences. But before he became one of America's most beloved male gods, Hudson was just Roy Fitzgerald, a poor truck driver from Illinois who came to Los Angeles with big dreams and a bright face. However, dreams could not pay the rent. According to many biographers and accounts from people who worked in the industry, Hudson's first steps in Hollywood were not limited to on-screen supporting roles. He was a regular at private parties where young actors like him tried to get acquainted with the powerful elite in exchange for opportunities or simply a place to sleep. Hudson's career was not a matter of luck. He was guided by Henry Wilson, a famous agent, and also a controversial figure who specialized in supporting young men entering the industry. Wilson had his way of creating stars, but in his world, nothing was free. Hudson was trained to be a public figure, and he played the game of trade-offs. The backstories never made it into the fan magazines, but in 1950s Hollywood, survival sometimes meant crossing the line into trade-offs, even in self-esteem. Rock Hudson's legacy goes beyond his on-screen roles. He exemplifies a truth few want to face. The Hollywood dream is sometimes built on unspoken agreements and uncomfortable choices. George Nader's journey from relative obscurity to movie stardom didn't begin with auditions. A close friend of Rock Hudson and part of the network of celebrity agent Henry Wilson, Nader's early days were marked by the mix of hope, pressure, and backroom dealings that shaped much of the post-war Hollywood underworld. Years later, rumors circulated that before he had a foothold in the industry, Nader joined Hudson at exclusive private parties, where good looks could be traded for career opportunities, powerful connections, or just money to make ends meet. But Nader was more than a pretty face. He was a survivor of a demanding system, both in front of and behind the camera. In Hollywood, the powerful set the rules, and young men like Nader had to adapt if they wanted to survive. Some scholars believe that his career took off only after he joined these famous gatherings, where opportunity and risk often went hand in hand. For a while, the game paid off. Later, however, Nader lived in a world of caution, surrounded by secrets that were hard to speak of. He became a close friend, and even the lover, of Rock Hudson, a relationship that was never made public in a time when such a thing could have ruined a career. George Nader's story reminds us that old Hollywood was a place where ambition, cunning, and the right connections could mean everything. And in that world, no one was truly immune to the realities that lay behind the scenes. Montgomery Clift. His face seemed to be the perfect embodiment of contemplation and sadness. Clift's deep eyes and breathtakingly honest expressions made each of his on-screen appearances special. But that honesty did not come from mere acting skills. It came from a life filled with pain and struggle that no amount of makeup could hide. Before he appeared on magazine covers or stood in front of the camera, Clift was just a poor young man, struggling between New York and Los Angeles. In an environment where looks were considered currency and desperation was the norm, his path was not smooth. Many accounts from friends, colleagues, and insiders show that Clift was in situations where his presence was more than just a social one. There were lonely nights, quiet trips, unspoken agreements. It was not a choice of desire. It was a choice of survival. It was the emotional simplicity that made Clift an icon, but it was also what made it impossible for him to hide the deep emotional wounds in his eyes. Hollywood may have romanticized his sadness, but behind the glamour was a young man who was constantly faced with difficult, even impossible choices. And he was not alone. Clift's story echoed in many a Hollywood audition room and movie set, but few could and dared to portray both sides of that reality as authentically as he did. If Montgomery Clift's life is anything to go by, it is the truth that Hollywood's golden age was not built on dreams alone, but on quiet sacrifices, sometimes even at the expense of oneself. Salmano, whose face was plastered on the bedroom walls of American teenagers, he was an icon for a generation. But Manao's path to stardom wasn't as easy as his looks might suggest. Before he burst onto the scene with his role in Rebel Without a Cause, he was just a young man growing up poor, trying to make it in Los Angeles, a city that can crush your dreams before the sun even rises. According to many biographers and insiders, Sal's early days were spent working in the shadowy corners of Hollywood. When auditions didn't pan out, he reportedly took private offers, working for discreet services to make ends meet. He was talented, determined, and willing to do whatever it took to survive. That double life, both public and private, is what complicated Mineo's journey. Even after he became famous, the darkness of his past did not let him go. The memories of that time, the trauma of such a young experience, never seemed to leave. Mineo's tragic death, a murder that remains unsolved to this day, only fueled the rumors surrounding him. But Sal's story is more than just a story about fame. It's also a reminder of the cost of survival in a Hollywood where youth and beauty are revered. But weakness is never forgiven. Sometimes the brightest stars come from the darkest places, and their stories are proof that staying here, even for a moment, can be costly. Anthony Perkins, long before he sent shivers down the spines of audiences around the world, as Norman Bates in Psycho, he was just one of countless aspiring young men struggling to make it in the competitive Hollywood of the 1950s. Perkins was a classic beauty, a shy smile, a secretive glint in his eye. And what he hid, according to many biographers, was the hard times before fame came. Like many of the other young men on this list, Anthony was said to have been part of an underground network of private parties and arranged meetings, where looks and desperation were sometimes the currency of choice for a chance at a job. Casting chairs were not always reserved for talent. They were also a market for young people willing to sacrifice much, including their dignity, for a chance. Perkins was a survivor, and like many others, he soon learned that a well-timed introduction or the right party could change fate overnight. Friendships, romances, and personal secrets were intertwined, forming a complex web that he spent most of his life keeping hidden from the media. Even as a major star, stories of his early struggles quietly followed. For Perkins, the scariest thing wasn't a scary scene on screen. The real fear was what he had to pay to get to the door of fame. In old Hollywood, not everyone was publicly wounded, but few actually emerged unscathed. Tyrone Power had a face that could sell thousands of movie tickets, and an unrivaled charisma. But before he became a movie hero and the love interest of every woman, Power was just a regular New York kid, struggling for small roles and trying to survive. Rumors from former studio employees, private memoirs, and behind-the-scenes stories reveal a past that belied the polished image the studios tried to project. Like many young actors, Power had private encounters with powerful men, relationships where help came at a price. In pre-war Hollywood, to survive, actors had to go beyond auditions and accept unwritten deals and companionships. But those stories were often revealed only after the cocktails had cooled. The lines between ambition, exploitation, and survival have blurred to the point of being almost indistinguishable. As Power became an international star, his past was shrouded in glamour and studio myth, but the rumors never completely disappeared. In Hollywood history, Tyrone Power's legacy is both a beloved on-screen icon and a testament to the quiet sacrifices that went unnoticed before he became famous. His story is a reminder that behind every fancy tuxedo is a complicated past, and that the price of entry into this world is always higher than what meets the eye. William Haynes was a true rebel of old Hollywood, playing by his own rules even if it meant losing everything. Before becoming MGM's top box office star, Haynes had to juggle New York and Los Angeles, using charm and wit to survive. Unlike many of his peers, Haynes would joke with friends about those early difficult days when the line between survival and despair was thin. He understood the real rules of the Hollywood game. If you were young, poor, and beautiful, there was always someone willing to pay for your companionship, your time, or your promises. For Haynes, these arrangements were not just desperation, but a way to gain control in a system that gave little power to young actors. When MGM forced him to choose between his career and his love, Haynes gave up the spotlight of superstardom to build a new empire, becoming Hollywood's most sought-after interior designer. Now he is remembered as a trailblazer, a defender of truth in a city built on lies. Haynes's story shows that sometimes the bold rebels become the greatest legends, not just because they survived, but because they dared to rewrite the rules of Hollywood. If you were to flip through a 1950s magazine looking for the ideal of an American heartthrob, chances are you'd see Tab Hunter beaming from the cover. His face was the epitome of on-screen perfection. But to get there, Hunter had to overcome far more complexities than fan clubs ever imagined. In his memoir, he shares a rare and honest account of what it took to survive in a town built on things that were never said. Like many of his contemporaries, Hunter soon learned that sometimes the only thing he had to offer was himself. And if you knew the right people, doors could open. The manager who helped launch Tab Hunter into fame, Henry Wilson, is a familiar figure in Hollywood backstory. Wilson was famous for taking young men who had just arrived in town, often as they got off the bus, and leading them into deals where the lines between personal and professional life were blurred. Though Hunter never named anyone, what he told us was enough to get the picture. If you wanted to survive, if you wanted to be noticed, sometimes you had to accept things that went beyond your role or your talent. Closed parties, secretive patrons, relationships that no one was allowed to talk about. It was all part of the journey. Tab Hunter was one of the few who emerged from that system with some dignity and privacy. But the price was always there. In sleepless nights, wondering whether his fame was truly deserved, and in the burden of secrets he carried throughout his career. Ultimately, Tab Hunter's story was more than just a journey from unknown to star. It's also a reminder that sometimes, to survive in Hollywood, you have to come to terms with things no one else would dare to talk about. Van Johnson, the MGM boy next door, with his innocent smile and charm, hid a much harsher truth. He arrived in Hollywood with nothing, no money or family support, and only a belief in his talent. But in a city where everyone was struggling to survive, talent alone was not enough. Hollywood was all about connections and backroom deals. Many have told of Johnson's difficult early days when he attended secret parties and interacted with directors, producers, and wealthy men with cash on hand. He was not alone. Dozens of young men survived on backroom deals where power and fame were just a word away. Johnson went from struggling to household name, a studio icon turned America's golden boy. But those who knew him before then remember him as someone who had weathered the toughest times in the business. Behind the perfect shots is the steely spirit of a survivor who knows that in Hollywood nothing is given for free. Farley Granger's on-screen innocence is legendary. Those big round eyes gradually lost their initial vulnerability, but in the Hollywood world of the 1940s and 1950s, beauty alone was not enough to survive. In her memoir, Granger candidly describes her complicated life, from being retained by a Broadway producer before moving to Hollywood, to high-class parties filled with hidden introductions. For Granger, the struggle was not about scandal, but about survival. Young, beautiful, and poor, he learned to navigate an environment where casting directors ignored gender, where connections were everything, and you had to play by rules you didn't make. Granger moved between worlds, always maintaining dignity, but never denying the difficulty when the spotlight went down. His story is a reminder that pretty faces in Hollywood often hide painful pasts, and that the most innocent people are often the best at hiding the hardships they've endured. John Ireland has always played the rough guy, the one with the cold stare and the lightning-fast fists. But his life before fame was less glamorous and more hard. As a young man in New York, Ireland faced the same cold realities as many actors: rent to pay, no roles, and doors slammed in his face. Film industry veterans and Broadway gossips have talked for years about Ireland's time as a houseboy. He was the young man who could be trusted to show up at the right parties, say exactly what the powerful men wanted to hear, and make sure they remembered his name. For Ireland, it wasn't wild nights out, but survival. He hustled not for thrills, but for the next meal, next month's rent, or a vacation that always seemed out of reach. Once he made it big, he never looked back, burying that chapter deep under his hard-as-nails star persona. But in every stern look, every grim roll, we still see the light of a child who realized early on that Hollywood only chews up the innocent and spits out the cunning. Richard Chamberlain, before he became Dr. Kildare or the emotional leads in epic romances, was just a promising young man, desperate for any chance in a cutthroat industry. Chamberlain's TV persona may have had it easy, but in reality, he struggled for years to get any opportunity that came his way. The dark side of Hollywood in those days was a complicated one. His early years were rife with rumors of escort gigs and private meetings where introductions came with expectations, even money. Chamberlain's career was carefully managed by powerful agents who orchestrated more than just auditions behind closed doors. He was part of a generation forced to do whatever it took to survive. Friends and insiders say Chamberlain attended private parties like many others, understanding that success depended not just on talent, but also on knowing who to meet and what to do when the opportunity arose. Even as he became a household name, those secrets never left him. Chamberlain's story is proof that the most beautiful faces on screen often hide the toughest battles and most complicated turning points in life. Carrie Grant, cool, suave, and a consummate leading man, was once Archibald Leach, a penniless kid who ran away from New York to Los Angeles before he became a star with a $1 million smile. He bounced from cheap lodgings to vaudeville acts, and according to many biographers, was no stranger to befrienders who wanted more than just theater company. Grant's rise exemplified the way many young men survived the silent and early talkie eras: private parties, secret deals, and mysteriously wealthy friends. Grant took advantage of every opportunity, constantly looking for the next step in his career. Some sources say his greatest asset was not his acting chops, but his willingness to charm, flirt, and sometimes push boundaries to avoid starvation. He later became a symbol of Hollywood's elite, but the darkness of his early days has never completely faded. Cary Grant is proof that innovation is Hollywood's greatest magic trick, but behind the glamour lies the hard work and harshness of trying to survive. John Gavin's path to stardom was a casting director's pipe dream: tall, handsome, and all-American. But behind the glossy studio press photos, Gavin's start in Hollywood was anything but smooth. The post-war years were fiercely competitive, and the city was rife with bad actors. Gavin's name frequently cropped up in the gossip mills about private co-star relationships. The Young Actor Network was managed by recruiters like Henry Wilson, who set up exclusive after-hours meetings where deals and introductions were made, with expectations that went beyond the casual handshake. For many, these arrangements were not a choice, but a necessity. Rent was due, groceries had to be bought, and sometimes the only way to get noticed was to accept invitations that weren't discussed publicly. Gavin was more than just a pretty face. He was a survivor, learning early to play the game even when the rules were constantly changing behind closed doors. His later image as a suave, respectable actor only proves how well he adapted. In Hollywood, the ultimate survivors are those who keep their secrets out of the public eye. Dennis Hopper, before he became a wild biker and symbol of Hollywood's new rebel movement, was just a young actor hoping for the next audition to turn his fortunes around. When his luck ran out, his resourcefulness helped him navigate a world of unwritten rules dictated by powerful agents, predatory producers, and endless parties. According to insiders, Hopper moonlighted in the 1950s, attending the right parties at the right time that could get you more than a drink, a recommendation, a small role, or simply next month's rent. Hopper's rebellious, unpredictable, and always-on-the-edge personality was shaped in those rough early days. Though he never admitted it outright, those around him knew his survival instincts were honed by understanding the workings of Hollywood's underground media. For Hopper, every favor came at a price, and every opportunity was just a step away from falling into obscurity. He played by the real rules of Hollywood, rules written in whispers and paid for in cash. George Maharis looked like a dashing American TV star, but his private world was entangled in the dark webs that made and shattered so many dreams in Hollywood in the 1950s and 1960s. He was arrested in what the press called compromising situations, exposing Maharis to public scrutiny more than once. But the reality behind the scenes was much harsher. In the early days of his career, Maharis, like many others, did whatever it took to survive, accepting invitations to parties, working for recommendations, and joining the silent army of young men who saw hustle as the only way to keep hope alive. Maharis's life was a testament to the duality of Hollywood, a glamorous TV hero by day, a struggling survivor by night. Even as his fame grew, the old rumors continued to haunt him. Maharis's story is a reminder that in Hollywood, the past never really passes, and dreams always come with a hidden price, paid in secret. Rudolph Valentino, the Latin lover who set hearts and boxes ablaze, is one of the first cautionary tales about the true cost of fame in this glamorous town. Fresh from Italy with nothing, Valentino worked odd jobs in New York and Los Angeles before landing his first roles. But along the way, he infiltrated circles where introductions to wealthy sponsors were more valuable than any agent. Biographers have pieced together stories of Valentino's youth with mysterious benefactors and befriending gigs, meetings that led to thinly veiled cash transactions. These were not the glamorous relationships of fan magazines, but grim, sometimes desperate arrangements. Valentino's striking looks were both his ticket to the industry and his greatest weakness. Rumors have persisted for decades, and while studio executives have done their best to protect his image, the truth is that for many young actors, surviving in Hollywood means paying a price that was never in their contracts. Valentino's tragic end leaves more questions than answers, but one thing is clear. In Hollywood, even legends have secrets, and the city whispers constantly. Guy Madison, the clean-cut cowboy image the public knew, was an elaborate act. In fact, Madison's early years in Los Angeles were defined by the backroom dealings and secret after-hours arrangements that had launched the careers of so many beauties in the 1940s and 1950s. Hand-picked by Henry Wilson, a mentor to aspiring young men, Madison was soon thrust into a world where invitations to exclusive parties were often seen as auditions for opportunities you'd never see in a studio contract. Rumor has it that Madison worked for the agency to pay his rent and build relationships long before his face was plastered on movie posters. Those close to him recall stories of whisper deals and mysterious benefactors, people who never appeared on paper but were always present in the shadows. Madison's journey is a reminder that behind every big break in Hollywood, there's an unwritten backstory. In this place, survival requires more than talent. It requires a willingness to do what's necessary, even when the lights go down and the cameras stop rolling. Don Murray is best known for his breakout role in Bus Stop. But before that acclaim, he endured years of hardship, failed auditions, and late rent payments. Like many others, Murray navigated the unspoken rules of Hollywood, accepting favors and gigs arranged by power brokers who expected more than a handshake. Stories of Murray's arrangements circulated in the film industry, painting a picture of a man who learned early on that opportunity came with strings attached. His success was based not just on talent, but also on his willingness to endure the toughest parts of the journey. Though he never made headlines for scandal, those who know the classic Hollywood code know that no one's path is perfect. Murray's story is a quiet testament to the fact that the most enduring careers often begin in places no one dares to talk about. Troy Donahue was the golden boy, the teen idol plastered on bedroom walls and in tabloid magazines. But the real story behind the perfect hair and radiant smile was a brutal struggle for survival. Like many of Henry Wilson's discoveries, Donahue entered Hollywood at a time when studio power brokers held enormous sway. His early years were marked by a series of all-night parties and special favors. These deals were widely discussed but never documented. Donahue's good looks opened doors, but they always came at a cost. He later spoke candidly about the desperate measures young actors took just to survive. In Donahue's Hollywood, hustle was never optional. It was the rule. His rise from scrappy rookie to household name was shaped by a system that demanded more than talent. He joined because, for most, there was simply no other way out. Jack Wrangler is a legend who straddles two completely different worlds. He made a name for himself in underground Hollywood, while also becoming a bold and influential figure in adult entertainment and theater. But before he became the center of media and attention, Wrangler was just an ordinary young man, persistently trying to find a way to survive in a city full of ambition and illusion. When he arrived in Los Angeles, he had nothing but charm and confidence. Wrangler quickly realized that the fastest way to make money or gain important introductions was through a secret network of friends, arranged in the shadows of the entertainment industry. His early friends remember him as fearless, never ashamed to admit that he did whatever it took to survive. From exclusive parties to signing contracts with powerful figures, Wrangler made money-making an art. What's remarkable is that he doesn't hide who he is. On the contrary, his honesty and lack of remorse have become his trademark, his calling card in the industry. Jack Wrangler has proven that sometimes the only way to beat Hollywood at their own game is to stop pretending, grab the spotlight, and make the world remember you on your terms, not theirs. Brad Dexter, forever the seventh man in the Magnificent Seven, has a story that doesn't begin on a red carpet. Arriving in Los Angeles with $1 to his name, Dexter's first jobs weren't glamorous. They were about survival. Insiders and old friends recall the arrangements Dexter made. Dinners with wealthy backers, late-night parties where the right companions could lead to acting opportunities. In those years, everything was negotiable. Friendship, loyalty, even the chance at fame. Dexter's career never reached the heights of superstardom, but he established a solid place in Hollywood. Yet beneath that tough exterior lies a memory of a time when simply staying in the game meant agreeing to contracts that no one spoke of in broad daylight. Dexter's story is a reminder. For every legend who becomes famous, there are dozens of others who have to work twice as hard just to taste the dream. Salvatore Salmano, The Rise and Fall of Salmano, reads like a true Hollywood cautionary tale. He became an overnight star, but before the cameras started rolling and the awards came, he was just another desperate face in the crowd. Many sources, from industry insiders to urban legends, have described Manao's lean years as a time when every dollar counted, and survival meant making choices no one wanted to admit. His name circulated in the underground, where favors and introductions were exchanged through whispers, deals, and closed-door meetings. Even after his rise to fame, Mano could not completely escape the underground economy that made his living. Rumors swirled around him, fueled by tragedy and scandal, until his death, one of Hollywood's greatest mysteries, cemented his reputation as a star and a survivor of the city's darkest games. Manao's story is a fitting end to this list, a reminder that, in the end, Hollywood's brightest lights always cast the longest shadows. So, 25 myths, 25 secrets buried just beneath the glittering glory emerge. Next time you watch a Golden Age classic, remember that every big smile on screen may have hidden a fight just to get through the door. Hollywood builds its empires on ambition, but survival often means playing by rules that no one made up. Which story surprised you the most? Share your thoughts below. Subscribe to see more of Hollywood's tumultuous history, and never forget the most fascinating stories are always hidden somewhere.